In quilting, we have a lot of tools that are tools that we use over and over. For example, our rotary cutters. We seldom have to replace our rotary cutters. We may have to replace the blades, but we don't have to replace the actual cutter. Our sewing machines last for a very long time. Our acrylic rulers last for a long time. Sometimes we have to replace them if we drop them and break them. A lot of the quilting tools we use are tools that last for a very, very long time. But today's topic are quilting consumables. I've made a rather long list of consumables that I'd like to talk about today. If there are consumable products I haven't mentioned that you would like to, please be sure to leave those in the comments below. Hello everybody, this is Michelle Fox and welcome back to The Simple Quilter. Today's topic is essential quilting consumables. The two top consumables on my list are, of course, fabrics, which you can see I have plenty of, but we do use lots of fabric. And the second one I wanted to talk about are threads. Over the years, I've purchased a lot of different colors of quilting threads. I've tried different brands, but I've kind of narrowed those down. I really stick to Aerofill and Metler threads. I use 30 weight and 50 weights. I have started using a polyester thread for ragtime and denim quilts because it's so strong, but I really stick to 4 basic colors: a white, a cream, black, and a navy. I really don't sew with many other colors other than those. On occasion I do, and I'm using up the threads that the other colors that I have, but I seldom buy any additional colors. And the nice thing about some of these neutrals is they will blend in with colors so that you don't have to always buy the exact color or the exact pink or the exact green color that you might think you need. Now I do have those and I do use them, but I seldom purchase them anymore. Another thing that we use a lot of is batting. Now I have a couple of bags of batting here in my quilt room, and I have lots of scrap pieces. I like to use my scrap batting pieces for small projects like placemats or mug rugs. So I do keep lots of scrap batting. The next consumable product I'd like to talk about are pins. Pins, things we use to hold our quilts together. Pins do get dull and they do get bent, and when they get bent and dull, I get rid of them. I do put any disposable sharps in a plastic container to help protect any family members who might be handling the trash, as well as sanitation workers. We want to keep everybody safe, and these can be a real hazard, especially our rotary blades and pins. But I've even narrowed my pins down. I really like these pins. I can't find them. I have a couple of boxes of them, but I do have to say I like the magic pins. I'm kind of shifting to using these more. I like these because they have a larger head to grip and they're a little bit easier to see, and they come in different like they have fine and extra fine, and I'm going to be ordering the extra fine, but I do like the magic pins. But just keep in mind that those are consumable products, and when they get bent and dull, you really do need to replace them. Now I do use a lot of clips. I like the small ones as well as the large ones, and these do break on occasion, but they seem to get lost a lot, so I have had to purchase a few more. I don't know where they go, but they do seem to get lost, so those are consumable products. If you're enjoying this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Sewing needles, the ones that you sew with to put on your binding, or quilting needles, those have to be replaced too. Again, those get bent, they get dull, and those do need to be replaced. The next products I want to talk about are fabric glues. Now I have started using my glue stick, fabric glue stick, more and more. I also have used this precision glue. I don't use this very often. I use this on smaller pieces when I really, have a small piece. Now these are not absolutely necessary. You can use pins, but sometimes the pins do not hold well enough, and these products make it a little bit easier. I also like to use basting spray. Now, again, this is not an absolute must, but I do like using this for my small quilting projects. It's just easier for me to use, and I think I get a better overall quilting project when I get done because it lays so flat. Another consumable product, since we're on the topic of pins and needles, those are your sewing machine needles. You really do have to replace those. For years I didn't know that, and I had a lot of misformed stitches because of dull needles. You really, really do need to replace those more frequently probably than you think. Another consumable product is sewing machine oil. It's very specific. You can't just go out and get oil out of the garage that your husband may be using. It does need to be specifically for sewing machines. Now, when this turns yellow or gets cloudy, you have to get rid of it. That means it's not any good anymore. And I always have a supply of sewing machine oil available. Now, my Bernina doesn't require much oil, but my Juki, if you read the instruction manual in the Juki, you really need to be oiling your Juki regularly. Rotary blades also need to be replaced frequently. It's important to cut with sharp tools to help reduce the wear and tear on the joints in your hands, wrist, elbow, and shoulder. You may not think that dull blades cause extra wear and tear, but quilting requires highly repetitive tasks, and using dull blades that increase the amount of pressure and force we have to use to cut fabric does cause wear and tear on the joints. So be sure you're using sharp rotary blades, and be sure you're replacing them frequently. Again, this is another product that we probably don't change frequently enough. Now, there are some hacks on how to keep them sharp, and you can use all those, but when it's dull, replace them. And again, use a safe disposable container for those to help keep everybody safe. Distilled water is another consumable. I used to use a lot more of it, but since I have been pre-starching my fabric, I find that I don't use this as much, but I always have some on hand. I also have a lot of starch products and starch alternatives. Best Press was my go-to for years and years. I still use Best Press when I don't pre-starch my fabric, or when I'm working on a UFO that has not been pre-starched. So I do like Best Press. Another starch alternative is Flatter. I think there's a new one out on the market. I'm not sure what it's called, but I've seen that online. And then Starch. Now, spray starch, I started pre-starching my fabric using spray starch, but I have to say I really prefer the liquid. I mix it 50-50, and I put it in like a garden sprayer when I'm doing large batches, or I dip my fabric in a container that has a 50-50 mixture. Now this is the cheaper alternative of all these. This goes much further than any of these other products. So if cost is an issue, this is the cheapest. Another consumable product are marking pens. Now I've used lots of different marking pens over the years, but now I really only use primarily these two. This is just called a General's Pastel Chalk Pencil. I use this on dark fabrics, and I use just a Papermate mechanical pencil on light fabrics. I like using this pencil. I have several of these. They're fairly inexpensive. You can get them at your local Walmart or other big box stores, but you can get several in a pack. They're not very expensive. I don't have to replace these very often, but I do have to replace the lead. These two choices are more budget friendly than some of the other marking utensils, and I really just don't buy very many other marking pencils. These are the two that I use. Something I didn't know for a long time, and I have to say I probably just learned it in the past 2 to 3 years, but seam rippers are consumable. They do get dull, and again, when you're having to apply a lot of force to ripping out seams, it's time to get a new one. Don't put that extra pressure on your finger joints, wrist joints, and the other joints in your arm. A lot of quilters use lots of fusibles, and these are consumable. I used to use a lot more fusible webs. I used to use the Heat and Bond Light, the heavier Heat and Bond, but I really don't use very many fusibles. I also used to use a lot of triangle papers on the roll or on a tablet form. Those are great, but I don't use those very much. I use them when I have, sometimes I use them, but not very frequently. There are lots of other options for making triangles and flying geese, but those triangles on a roll or flying geese on a roll are consumables, as well as other fusible products. Now, there was a time where I could not be without Heat and Bond, especially the light. I just couldn't be without it, but I don't use that very often, but I do have a little bit on hand. One consumable product that I use a lot of, those are sticky rollers. I have lots of these, and I don't run out of these. This is something I always have to have. I just have lots of uses for it in my quilt room. I also use a lot of painter's tape. I use this for basting. I've used it for marking my sewing machine to help give me a guide for my fabric. I just use a lot of painter's tape in my quilt room. I have lots of Ziploc bags. I do try to recycle Ziploc bags, and when I order products online, if they come in Ziploc bags, I save those and reuse those Ziploc bags. But I like to have these in my quilt room. The last thing I wanted to mention are Post-it notes. I used to have a lot of different notepads in my quilt room, but I really always went to the Post-it notes. So now I just use Post-it notes. I use a variety of sizes, the big ones, the little ones, the lined ones, the unlined ones. Post-it notes are a must-have, and these are definitely a consumable product in my quilt room. In the comments below, if there's some consumable products that I've left out, please be sure to list those in the comments below. And until next time, have fun quilting.